welcome young witches and wizards to the TestWizardry, I don't know, show, podcast, lesson. And this is lesson 2. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to delve into Java, learn about Java variables and types, control structures like if statements, for loops, while loops, all sorts of things, and get to know some of the basics of core Java. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and jump in. Now, I created a project this morning. You can see I've got all these different hellos. It's in GitHub.
Hey, Aaron, if you are
Yes.
sharing something, we are not.
Oh, thank you. I will share my screen. All right. And I will minimize all this other stuff. Oops, that's what I wanted to show. So what I wanted to show is I'll be putting the code that we worked through. I've got some of the things we'll be going through today, but in the TestWizardry repo on GitHub. So if you go to github.com/testwizardry, we've got core Java basics here. And I just added at the start of this some of the code you can go through. So you can go to this URL and you can actually look at each of the individual files. But what I'm going to do, and it may not look exactly the same, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually, well, what I'll do is I will create a new project and essentially recreate those things as well. And you can see what I showed you right there was just some playing around with math. And I've got more windows to clear. All right. All right. So let's start off again with our hello world, right? Yesterday we went through, creating a hello world Java class, right? The most basic Java class. Oh, I know where it is. It's in the source folder. So I don't have to retype it. So I have this hello world Java, right? Let's break this down one more time just to make sure that everything goes through. We have a class. Everything in Java is an object, and every object is defined by a class. We'll go more into object-oriented programming in detail later, but right now you just need to know every program starts with public class and then the class name. In this case, it's hello world. The file name is helloworld.java and the class name is hello world. Those two do need to match. And then every application, every program you run in Java needs to have an entry point. The entry point is main. So the main method or function is here. It's public, which means it can be accessed outside this class or outside this package. It's static. That means there's only one instance of it in the class. It has a return type of void. That means it returns nothing. It's called main. Main is always the name of your entry point for your class. It has a single parameter inside these parentheses. That single parameter is args, the arguments to your application. If you're familiar with command line, you're probably familiar with command line flags or arguments or parameters, as you might call them. It's called args by convention, but you can call it whatever you want. You can call it parameters, if I can type, or you can call it bunnies or anything you want. But I'll stick with the convention args. Now we're jumping a little bit ahead here, but that is a string array. These two square brackets denote that it's an array. It's a group of something. You might have 1, 2, 3, kind of like a footnote here. What this means is there's more than one of these arguments. And this is the next thing I'm going to show you. And what does this program do? It just prints hello world. So let's go ahead and run this program, right? We can, now, yesterday I talked about how you need to compile something, right? So you would use Java C, the compiler, and you would compile hello world.java. And then you can see I have two programs, hello world.java and hello world.class. Let me bring up the chat. Please add the chat GitHub link to the chat. I did add the GitHub link to the chat. Anyway, so we've got hello world.class and hello world.java. Java is a source code. .class, you remember, if you saw, if we look at it, it is a binary file. And hello world.class, it has all these control characters, all these non-printable characters. And if you remember when I printed it in DOS yesterday, it had a bunch of smiley faces and hearts and weird symbols, which aren't the actual code, but it's representative of characters that it doesn't know how to print in the console. So the class file is what we execute, right? So, and we don't execute it by calling hello world.class, calling Java hello world.class. We just call it hello Java hello world, and it prints hello world. Now, there's a little trick. If you have a recent Java version, I think it's Java 11 plus, or maybe it's even just 14 plus, you can actually use the Java interpreter, or the interactive compiler. So you can actually call Java hello world.java like that, and you can see that actually reads the interpreted file. So if I look at hello world.java, and I can change this to, let's change this to, say, hello Aaron. Aaron being my name, right? So I've written that file, right? And I can, if I type Java hello world.java, it will interpret this Java file. It will compile it on the fly, and it says hello Aaron. But now if I invoke my class file, remember I don't include .class, I just say hello world, it's still going to say hello world. So that's something to know. And if I want to change that, I would have to actually compile it. And you can see here that that I have these new things, and I have here the hello world.java, it says at 10:11, and the hello world.class at 10:12. I'll go back and I'll change this back to hello world. All right, so now I have hello world right here. And you can see that printed out. It says hello world. And I type Java hello world.java, it prints hello world. But if I go back to Java hello world, which is going to execute the class file, it will still say hello Aaron. And then if we look one last time at this, at everything hello world, we can see, okay, so the timestamp doesn't show a difference in minutes. But when I run the compiler, Java C, hello world.java, now that it's flipped over to 10:13 in my time, we'll see now the hello world.class has been more recently compiled. And then when we do Java hello world, it goes back to hello world instead of hello Aaron. I just wanted to show that so that you know that there's both this interactive hello Java hello world.java here, that you can do that. That's actually interpreting the source code and running that on the fly. And that might come in handy for understanding how your editor works versus how the compiler works separately. Probably going too in-depth into something like that for this early stage, but it helps to be aware. So if you're confused, forget about it and remember it when you're confused how the compiler is behaving at some point in the future. All right, that said, we're going to leave the command line behind for a while, and we're going to launch Eclipse. Now, if you want to download and install Eclipse, you would go to, you could go to eclipse.org. eclipse.org. And you can see you go to download and you choose the version for your operating system. It's available on Mac, Windows, and Linux. You download the Eclipse installer, and then you can see I'm going to launch Eclipse. We have the Eclipse installer. I won't go through this. I just want to bring it up for the sake of those who might still be installing it. And it will show the Eclipse installer, which goes through and downloads Eclipse. When it comes up, what you want to select is Eclipse IDE for Java developers. Don't worry about enterprise Java developers. You can also use Eclipse if you want to program in C or C++ or other languages as well. So just pick the first one, Eclipse IDE for Java developers. It allows you to pick a virtual machine to use, or you can select from an existing one, or it will optionally install one for you, and it'll show you where it wants to install it. Here it would do 2020-09, and what is it? It has a 1402. I'm not going to click install, but you can click install and go through that. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and launch here, and I want to build a bridge between how things work on the command line and how they work in Eclipse, which is why I started off with the command line to make that a little easier. Now I've got all these files open, and I'm going to close them because it's in my existing project. I don't want to use my existing project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new project, right? File, new Java project is what you want to do. You click on that, it asks you for the project name. I'll call it TestWizardry Java Basics. All right, it says use the default location. You can put it wherever you want. The default location is wherever your Eclipse workspace is defined. You can see my default location is here. You can uncheck that, and if you want to put it in your temp directory or in your home directory or whatever, go ahead. First project, you get going with Eclipse, use your default location, or if you're more experienced with Eclipse, you're probably going to have one or more workspaces set up. Okay, next thing we want to look at is the JRE. That's the Java runtime environment. It wants to say, what version of Java do you want? Now, this depends on what versions of Java you have available. You can see I can go back to, way back to old 1.0, 1.1. You want to use at least 1.8 Java. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick with the most recent, minus a couple weeks, which is 14. If you just downloaded Eclipse today, you'll probably have Java SE 15 available. That's fine to use. If you have a different JDK, so you can see here I have 3 different ones. I have the Java SE. This is the commercial Oracle supplied Java. I have 1402, the open JDK, the open source version, and I have an older one, 12.02 on this system. Again, this is something you can usually just ignore. I'm just going to use the default execution environment, Java SE 14. Where this comes in important is in the future, when you're building cross-platform or when you're building on your continuous integration system, maybe your CI server or maybe your workplace standardized on a specific version. Maybe you have version 9 or 11 or 12 or whatever, and you need to build to that version. And it may work for you just fine on 14 or 15, and I'll show you a trick today that does work on version 14 that won't work on older Java versions. Because Java is a slowly growing and expanding language, and more features are added as it comes. Let me take a minute to see if there's anything else in the chat. Oh, thank you. We've got some more people that need admitted. Let's see, participants. Oh, we've got 1, 2, 3 more joining in. All right, great. By the way, thank you, Silvio. If there's something that needs addressed, like you can't see my screen or there's people who need MIDI, go ahead and interject with some audio. But otherwise, if it's not important or pertinent, please stay muted, especially if you have background noise. You may hear kids in the background from myself. All right, so going on, project layout. We're not going to worry about this. You can use the project folder as the root, or you can create separate folders for source and class. What that means is you compile it, and the default is to put it in a bin folder. And a lot of this is going to be irrelevant in the future because we're going to follow the Maven project structure, which I'm not going to go in now. Maven is a build tool and a dependency management system and a repository of libraries all in one. And we're going to use Maven in the future, but we're going to keep it simple now. All right, and do you want to have a working set? That's a group. Now, click on Next. This allows you to set your Java settings. Like you can add libraries, you can have multiple project dependencies, you can change the source folder. For instance, you can add different things to your build path. We're not going to do anything here. You can just click Finish. It says create a module info.java. Just ignore that for now. We don't need to create a module. All right. So you can see here, I've got this other project, Core Java Basics, and I'm going to actually just delete that so it doesn't confuse us. That's okay. Because it's also in my GitHub repo, I can always restore it. All right, so you can see here I have the JRE, Java SE Standard Edition 14. This is a library that's linked, and you can see all the different tools in here. We're not going to even look at that. I just wanted to show you that happens when that expands. Then we have this SRC. That's short for source. This is your source folder. This is where you throw your files. Now, this is just a convention, but it's a good convention. And it's where you put your source files, and it'll put the compiled files in a folder called bin, but we're not going to dwell too much on that because of this basic folder structure is actually going to change again when we start using Maven projects. And the great thing about Maven is it's a set of standard ways to build a project, to structure the files, and it gives you access to a whole world of other repositories and tools, makes it easier to build, makes it easier to replicate stuff across different machines. All right, that's a whole lot of nonsense for a beginner right now. What we want to do is we just right click on the source folder, or we can go up to File, New Java Class. I like to click here so I know where I'm going. New class. Let's recreate our hello world. And now it says source folder. It's going to be in this SRC package. Default package, we're not going to put a package. The name is hello world. You can see there's other things you can check. We just want it public, which is going to be default. Ignore the rest of this for now. But you can see this public static void main string args. Go ahead and check that. You don't have to, but if you do, it will create a main folder or method. Now, next thing we'll do, public static. If you had checked that create main, if I can type, public static void main string square brackets args. And now something you may notice as you're typing along is Eclipse by default will put these brackets on the first line. This is a common convention. So your code may look like this. I like lining up my brackets, and I'm a stickler for that sort of thing. I think it makes it easier to read when you can see that your brackets are aligned. This one matches this one matches this one. And it gives a little bit of vertical spacing. The main reason that people like to put this up here, again, white space, space characters, new lines, tabs, don't mean a thing in Java. They're just stripped out when it compiles. But if you do this, you can see you can fit it on fewer lines. So on a smaller screen or with a bigger font, that can be valuable. I choose readability, vertical spacing as my value versus space saving. You may have a different value, like if you're good at keeping a lot of things in your brain at once and you can look at a large amount of data on the screen and parse that, by all means save space, fit stuff onto your screen and go for it. For me, I'm old and slow, and so I need my spacing. All right. Let's get back. We're still on Hello World, and we need to get past that, right? So let's recreate Hello World in Eclipse. System out print line. Just remember, this is the standard print statement in Java. You can create a function to override that, but we're not going to worry about that now. You'll get tired of typing it out, and then I'll show you a trick for a shortcut. Now, to run this program in Eclipse, there's a few ways you can do that. You can go over here to this file, helloworld.java, in your Package Explorer view on the left-hand side by default, and you can go run as Java application. And it says Hello World in the console output down below. And if I change this to say Hello Aaron, I can also run it a different way. I can go up here and you see this little green circle with a play button. I can run Hello World here and it'll work. And I can change it to Hello Wizards. And this is kind of cool too. I can actually click on my class here in my source code editor and do run as Java application. And it says Hello Wizards. So there's three main ways, as well as some other ways that you can run that, which we'll see in the future. Now, what I want to show you first is I want to introduce variables. Now, variables are the way you tell Java, or you tell the computer you want to remember something. So I'm going to create a variable, and it's going to be a string. A string is, as opposed to a number, it can contain any characters. So I want to have a string, and I want to call it name. Right? So, and my name is Aaron. So I'm telling the computer, I'm saying, remember the word name. The name means Aaron. Aaron is the value assigned to the variable name. So I declare the variable name, and I declare it of type string, and then I use the equals sign to assign the value Aaron to it. Now, I'm going to change this so that rather than saying hello world or hello wizards or whatever, it's going to say hello, and I'm going to put a plus here. And this is one of the few magic things in Java that doesn't make sense, although it's a handy convention. In many other languages, they override the operator plus so that it can concatenate strings together, which means add two strings together. Take two sets of text and combine them into one. That's what it's doing here. This is, if not one of the very few exceptions in Java where it does things that you can't do on your own, and that is to use the plus specifically for strings as opposed to math. 1 + 1 = 2. Hello plus name equals, and I can run this again, hello Aaron. So I'm using a variable, and now I've got this print statement, hello name, and I can change this, right? I could say hello Harry, for Harry Potter, of course, and it says hello Harry. And I can change this variable however I want. Now, here's the next thing I want to show you. We're going to go back to the command line, and we're going to run this same program. And you can see I have, let's see, TestWizardry Java Basics. Now, Eclipse created this .class path, this .project, and this .settings folder. And you can see it also created the src and bin, source for, or src for source, bin for binary, your compiled files. So if we list our source, we can see hello world. And if we list our bin, we can see hello world.class. So it kind of separates that, which makes it easy and nice to explore. But what we're going to do is we're going to go Java. Let's go to our bin folder, and not on Windows now. I'm on Mac. Hello world.class, right? So I can do Java hello world, and this is building up to something. It says hello Harry. Now, what I want to do now is I want to talk about this args. We've ignored this right now, this string args. And what this is this is a list. So what I want to do is I've got name. Let's change this back to world. And it says Java hello world. Now, here's what I want to do. Let's take a look at this args. So I'm going to do a system out print line number of args or arguments. And then I'm using this plus. And then what I want to do is args.length. And you can see Eclipse helps me out here. Let me hide the participants list so I can see. It says this. It's helping me out. I do this args dot, right? Args dot gives all these different methods that it knows that args has. Now it knows it has this because it knows it's a string array. So args.len length, and I can actually just hit enter and it'll finish typing that for me. And then try not to forget the semicolon on the end. If I do forget it, Eclipse will give me a warning. It gives me this little red underline and this little X here that says syntax error, insert semicolon to complete statement. So I want to do that. And I've got no red marks, no X's, no squiggles. So this means that it has compiled successfully. If I delete this and I try and run it, it says errors exist, proceed with launch. And it says exception in thread main. Java lang error, unresolved compilation, insert semicolon to complete statement. So I can go there, I can rerun it, and it works. Now it says number of args equals 0. This is where I want to show you how it ties back Eclipse in with the command line, so there's no mystery. A lot of people start out with an IDE like Eclipse or IntelliJ, and they might not know for quite a while how it ties back into the original source code and the command line compiler. So that's what I want to show you at the start, right? So we're here in the TestWizardry workspace. This is where Eclipse is working from. And we've got our project is called TestWizardry Java Basics, right? And I think I can also show here package presentation, filters. That's probably what I want. What I want to do is I want to show that the bin folder is there. Anyway, I'm not sure how to do that in Eclipse, but it's there. I have this default package under source, and we'll see in a minute how that's relevant. But anyway, so we've got TestWizardry Java Basics. That matches the name of our project. It's just a folder, and again, looking at the contents of this folder, it has these 3 files here, well, 2 files and a directory with additional files. These are created by Eclipse for managing it. But other than that, this still works without Eclipse, right? So I can go to Java, or I can go to my source folder, and I see Hello World Java. I can do Java C hello world.java. And now you can see I have hello world.class in my source folder. Now Eclipse actually puts it in the bin folder. And if I hit refresh here, it looks like it's filtering it out. All right, I still don't know how that filter works. But what I want to show you, and I can show you also in my Finder by going to go to my TestWizardry workspace, TestWizardry Java Basics. I have the bin folder that has hello world.class, and I have the source folder, which also has this hello world.class that I compiled just now from the command line. And I can Java hello world right here, and that works. Now, what I want to show you here is I have Java hello world. Now I'm going to add some arguments, right? I'm going to add my name here. Number of arguments is 1, and if I add number of arguments 2, now there's 4 arguments. Each separate string, space separated, is a separate argument in Java. So what I want to actually do is I call this hello name in the other one. So let's go ahead and change that, and we'll call this hello name. So we've got hello world, which really just prints out hello name or hello world, right? We've got hello world, prints out hello world. We've got hello name, which prints out your name, right? And then we'll have, we'll just call this one hello. All right, so hello name will run and print out hello Aaron. And this is just to go in line with what I have on GitHub. Hello world still prints hello world. Now, hello will actually say hello to your name, just like name, but instead of getting name from here, we want it to be args sub 0. So Java arrays are based on 0, 0, 1, 2, 3. Most programming languages count by starting with 0. So just know that args 0 means the first argument from the command line. So if we run this, and I'm going to go ahead and step back to the command line and run this because these are actually meant as command line arguments. So if I do hello world and I'm going to go to Java hello, well, yeah, I'm going to do hello.java here. Don't be confused. This is the interpreter. It's interpreting the source code live as opposed to going to the bin folder, which I could just do as well. All right, so I'm doing Java hello Java Aaron. So let's go to the bin folder, and now I can say Java hello Aaron. Because it compiles, right? And if I change the name to something else, now on the command line, notice my file is still hello plus name, but it's getting it from arg sub 0, right? If I call it hello Harry, it says hello Harry. If I say hello Hermione, it says hello Hermione, or hello Ron, it says hello Ron, or whoever, hello Voldemort, hello Voldemort. All right, so it's getting it from the arguments. What happens though if I just do hello? I get an exception or an error in thread main, array index out of bounds. So index 0 out of bounds for length 0 at hello main line 5 in hello Java. So you can see line 5. It's saying here, wait a minute, there's no index 0 for length 0. Let's go ahead and bring back that length. Yeah, let's bring back that length. Just type it out. All right. You can see it says number of args 0 now. But remember, length 0 essentially means that there are no elements in here. If I can just kind of I'm going to use what we call pseudo code, which means to make up something that's not real code, and to explain what's going on here. So what we've got is we've got args sub 0. Now, if there's one argument, arg sub 0 equals Aaron, right? You can think of it kind of like a spreadsheet or a list, right? Arg sub 1 would be Evans, etc. if I did Aaron Evans. So if I go back to hello Aaron, there's one argument. Hello Aaron Evans, there's two arguments. If I delete these, there's no arguments. I'm not passing any arguments into my hello script. So that's why it's failing. What we need to do is we need to check that. And that brings us to our next topic, which is conditional statements. And when I say conditional statements, I mean if statements, right? So what I want to do is before I try and assign this, I want to make sure there's something there. I'm printing out that amount. So what I want to do is I want to say if arg's length is greater than 0, meaning 1 or more, then go ahead and print this out. Now, there's another thing I want to point out, and that is, you see these brackets, they have a block scope. Any block, the class is a block, the function or method main is a block. Inside this if statement, that's a block too. And you can see here, Eclipse is helping me out. It says name cannot be resolved to a variable. That's because the name variable is being assigned inside that if block. It is local to that block. So what I want to do is I want to assign it outside. And this is something that if you've programmed in C, you're used to. You always declare your variables at the top of any function. So you can see here I have string name. I'm declaring name here, and then I'm assigning it in this if blocks. And it still gives us a warning here. It says it may not have been initialized. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a default value. And now anytime I put a string here in quotes, you might notice that when I put it in quotes, it changes the coloring, and that's kind of nice. That's another thing that Eclipse does, is it does syntax highlighting. So you can see public class and public static void. These are all kind of a purplish, magenta. I don't know, what color do you call that? And let me take a second here to check Zoom again. Wait. Look at the participants, see if anyone else needs in. Okay, good. I miss having my multiple monitors. I've got to get that set up again so I can have the Zoom controls off screen, but still visible. All right, so the number of arguments, we're setting name to be default world, and we're saying if there is one or more argument, assign name to the first argument. We're declaring it as a type of string here, defaulting to this literal value. A literal string is something enclosed in quotes. And you, by default, right, this is essentially saying create a string and call it world and assign it to or create a string with the value world and assign it to the variable of type string called name. That's kind of a mouthful. I hope it made sense. And then what we're doing here, I'm introducing if. An if statement is conditional. If arg's length is greater than 0, if there is one or more arg, take the first argument and assign it to name. Now this isn't a literal string. This is actually a variable that's passed in. The Java runtime environment knows to read the command line and get the arguments from there. So now when we do this, what will happen? If we supply an argument, it will assign the argument to the name value. If not, it will use the default world. So let's go ahead and try this out. Go back here. And so I say Java hello. and it says number of args is 0, hello world. Now if I say Java hello Aaron, number of args is 1, and it says hello Aaron. And it always uses the first one, right? But say I say hello Aaron Evans. What I want to do next is I want to tell if it has the number of arguments to be Evans, or to be 2, I want it to say hello Mr. Evans instead. So that's the next thing I'm going to do. So what I want to do is I want to then say if args.length is greater than 1. Now this is an expression here that evaluates. If the length here should be 1 if it's Aaron, it should be 2 if it's Aaron Evans. So if it's greater than Evans, what I want to do is I want to create a new variable called last name. Or I want, yeah, I do. I want to create a string called last name equals args sub 1. Remember, arg sub 0 is the first, arg sub 1 is the second. And when I say sub, I mean like subscript, just like when you put a footnote in and you're using a typewriter that doesn't have, superscript and subscript. So this is the first argument, or this is the argument. This is actually the second argument, argument sub 1. That's just the language we use to describe that. Now we can see here, it gives us a little hint. There isn't an error, but it says the value of the local variable last name is not used. All right. So what we want to do is we want to use it. So, and we actually, we'll move this up here. I meant to do that. So what we're doing is we're saying, hey, if they've given their name, say hello name. If they give 2 arguments, we're making an assumption here. Their last name is the second argument. First name is first argument. Last name is second argument. If you're Chinese or Japanese, I guess that would be flipped around. I don't know if you're from India, how that matters. In Spanish, you might have multiple names, both your patronymic and matronymic last names. Anyway, I'm just keeping it simple here. And as a matter of fact, you'll see I'm going to do something else that's not flexible. What I want to do is I want to say, nice to meet you, Mr. Now, the computer doesn't know whether I'm a boy or a girl, and we could create some algorithm that tries to deduce that from my name. But when we get into more detail, we'll actually have to have the computer ask us, and I'll show that later. Mr. Last name. And let me make that a little smaller so we can see it all on the screen at once. By the way I make the text bigger and smaller is Control plus and Control minus, or Control equals and Control minus. Just for you, if you want to know your Eclipse shortcuts. So we can see here, showing our little hint in the comments, args 0 is Aaron, and args 1 is going to be Evans. Of course, it could be anything else. That's just by example. So let's go ahead and try this out. Java hello Aaron Evans. Number of arguments 2. Hello Aaron, nice to meet you, Aaron Evans. Now we could do hello Harry Potter, right? Hello Harry, nice to meet you, Mr. Potter. If we just say hello Harry, well, it just says hello Harry. If we just say hello, it just says hello world. So that's pretty basic there, right? Now, I wanted to show one other problem that won't work. For instance, if I said hello Hermione, it'll say hello Hermione. But if I say hello Hermione Granger, well, nice to meet you, Mr. Granger. That computer is making an incorrect assumption about her gender. We don't want that to happen. We could say Ms. And that way, if we run this again, nice to meet you, Ms. Granger. But of course, if we go back to Aaron Evans or Harry Potter, Nice to meet you, Ms. Potter. Well, that's incorrect too. This is where programs get tricky, and you can have a lot of data, and you might have some data point that doesn't have someone's gender or preferred pronoun. But we'll stick with Mr. because I'm a Mr. Evans. And you could use this, you could consider different languages. For instance, in Spanish, I might say, hola, and I don't know enough Spanish to do nice to meet you. Bienvenidos, welcome. All right, so, and this is where programming gets complicated, right? If you consider the way that language branches out and the way that you can have multiple languages, multiple variables, it gets pretty complicated there. All right, so we've talked about how to use Eclipse. We've talked about how to set a variable, right? You can set a variable and then use that variable later. And then we've showed how you can get arguments and how you can use a conditional if statement. I was hoping we would be able to explore more if statements in more detail, but we'll get into that later. I want to do one more thing before we end today, and that's I want to introduce you to another control structure called looping, right? So we'll call this hello, hello. And public static void main string brackets args, an array. All right, we're going to leave the arguments behind because in truth, unless you're creating a command line or a application that has multiple various configurations, you rarely use those arguments, but it's useful to know what they are. And every Java application starts with that right in the main folder. For more complex applications, you'll probably not use the command line arguments, but you'll actually use a configuration file that you build logic into your application for how to read that file. So what I want to do is I just want to introduce a loop, right? For is a loop, right? You create a block. Now inside of our block, it's in parentheses. It takes three different things. It takes a value. By default, we call it int for integer, a number, I for an index because we're keeping track of this, and I'll show you why. Because we're adding it. Now, this is something that if you're not familiar with programming, adding it, I++, that's the same thing as saying I equals I plus 1. But there's one other thing we need in between those. And this is just a convention that carries over from the C language. Other programming languages handle loops in ways that are maybe easier to read. What we want is we have these three expressions together. One, we assign our first variable. The next is we check it. So what we want to do is we want to say I is less than 10. And then we've got I equals I plus 1 or I plus plus. We increment it. So what we're saying is start at 0, go until we're 10, and then stop. And by the way, post increment that. This is another one of those things that it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's a convention that everyone follows. And so I just want to get you used to it right away. And what we're going to do is we're going to our old friend hello world. And we're just going to run this, right? And what it will do, it will print 10 times. Hello world. Let me expand this out. There we go. Drag that. And trust me, that's 10. You can count them up. 5 and, uh-oh, is that 6? Okay, now you can't trust me. I'm 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, that's 10. Now, if I change this to I equals 10, or I is equal to the double equal sign, it will print oh, it fails on the first try because it doesn't, it equals 0. So we can print that more than one time. We can change this to 5 and it will print it 5 times. We can change it to 100 and it will print it 100 times, which is a whole lot. And another thing we can do is we can add our number. So if you run this, you can see it says 0 hello world, 1 hello world, 2 hello world, all the way down to 99 hello world. Now, another way to look at this is, if you know the old song, 99 bottles of beer on the wall, you can, well, let's change that. What's the potion called that that makes you transform in Harry Potter to make you look different? 99 potions of... Anyone got their Harry Potter trivia? I need to find out a potion. Let's see. While that's looking up, how do we handle the edge case of not passing any arguments using an if statement? Ah, that is a good question. I'll go through that in a little bit, but we sort of covered it. Let's see. Polyjuice, that's what it's called. Don't we have any Harry Potter experts in the classroom? Professor Snape would be so disappointed. All right, so now we're going to reverse it, right? We're going to start with 99. We're going to say it's greater than 0, and we're going to minus. So it would be I equals I minus 1. So we're subtracting. Each time we go through the loop, we subtract 1 from the number. And here we go. 99 potions of polyjuice on the wall. 98 all the way down to 1 potions of polyjuice on the wall. All right. So I'll finish with answering that one question. How do we check the case here where args is empty, right? So what I'm doing here is I'm saying if args length is greater than 0. Now, args will return 0 even if it's completely unassigned. So now if I said if args equals 0, and that's another thing I could do, is I could say if args dot length equal to 0, I could say, what is your name? And so now, when we run this in Eclipse, it says, what is your name? Hello world. Or if this wasn't there, it would just say hello world. So what you may be asking is, how can we run this in Eclipse with 0 arguments? And this is the last thing I want to show for the day. This is kind of weird, kind of tricky. It's just something you need to know. There is a way in Eclipse to pass in arguments as if you were on the command line and not using the command line. The way to go this is to go to run configurations. So you can see here, you can go run as. Now run configurations. We've got a run configuration for all these different Java applications, right? For hello, for hello, hello, for hello name, and for hello world. Since we're using hello, oops, it ran it. So I'll go back to run configurations. I'm clicking on hello here, so it's highlighted, and then it shows what my main class is, hello, in this project, and then the arguments. This is as if there were command line arguments. I can put hello, Aaron, and then I can run it. Now it says hello, Aaron, instead of what is your name. And then I can go back and I can create a new run configuration, right? And then I have hello and hello 1. I can change this. Hello with no args. And that will run there. I can go create another one. Hello. Let me try that again. I'll create another copy of hello, new configuration, and I can give this another name, hello with 2 args. And I'll go here and I'll call it Harry Potter. Run. Hello, Harry. Nice to meet you, Potter. And then I can go back up here and I can run this again, but I can also click this tiny little down arrow. I have hello, which says hello, Aaron. I have hello with no args, which will say, what is your name? Hello, world. And then I have hello with 2 args, which will say, hello, Harry Potter. I don't know if that answers your question specifically, but what a lot of programs do is they don't check if args is not defined or if args length is 0. And this is where a lot of bugs come into programs. So it's important to have tests to test all these different edge cases. And in this case, I'm making sure if it equals 0, if it equals 0, that we handle it correctly. In this case, we can trust the Java compiler that it will never be a negative number. There's also limitations on the way the command line intercepts, so that it's not going to be some huge number greater than 2.5 billion or whatever the overflow size is for a string array. Anyway, that's all for today. I will go ahead and stress one last time. The TestWizardry Core Java Basics has the different versions of hello. It has a hello args here, which just checks for hello with 1 arg, and then it has hello args 2, which is what we just showed, that says, nice to meet you, Mr. So-and-so for last name. And then it has our hello, which loops through and prints it multiple times. So that's all we've got time for today. Tomorrow, we're going to go into more about different types. We'll talk about the difference between strings and individual characters, the difference between integers and floating point and doubles. Spoiler alert, that means whole numbers and decimal numbers. We'll talk about other types like Booleans and different sizes of integers. And we will take this, hello name, and we will build a simple application that allows you to apply to Hogwarts, and it will tell you whether you've been accepted or not. And it'll do things like say, hello, Harry, or it'll say like, you're a wizard, Harry, or you're a witch, Hermione. Remember the condition of Mr. Evans. We're going to talk about, similar to Mr. and Mrs. or Ms. Hogwarts application runs into the same thing. You're a wizard, which actually I think they use as kind of a overarching title. All witches and wizards are wizards, kind of like men and women are both mankind. But anyway, so Hagrid can say, you're a wizard, Harry, or you're a witch, Hermione, based on the gender pronoun that you prefer. And then it'll do things like it'll check if you've been if you're able to be admitted to Hogwarts or not, and eventually we'll get to the point where you go through the sorting hat and you're assigned to one of the houses based on a secret algorithm that only the sorting hat knows. So thanks for your patience and attention today, guys. We'll talk to you more tomorrow, and I'm still working on getting yesterday's video posted online, but TestWizardry.com. Look for the content up there soon, the videos as well as the links to the lessons and the source code. Take care, and go ahead. Did you have a comment? Oh, yes. You're welcome. Feel free to continue giving comments. And by the way, there's a Slack channel where we can help each other out. I'm not always going to be monitoring the Slack, but I'll check it in a few times a day. If you have questions and you're trying to work through the examples yourselves, or feel free to help each other out in the Slack channel as well. Until tomorrow, we'll see you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.